December 1st, 1948, dawn breaks over Somerton Park Beach in Adelaide, Australia, painting the sky in somber hues. The quiet of the morning is about to be interrupted by a discovery that will perplex investigators for decades. Against the seawall, a man is seen resting. He is dressed impeccably in a suit and tie, an unusual sight for the location. His posture seems relaxed, as if he simply fell asleep watching the waves, but something is profoundly wrong. Authorities are called to the scene. They find a man with no signs of struggle, no outward signs of what happened. He appears to be in his mid-40s, in peak physical condition, yet he is unresponsive, a silent figure against the stone. The first layer of the mystery unfolds as they search his person. His pockets are nearly empty. There is no wallet, no identification, no money. It's as if he was intentionally erased from the world. Even more bizarrely, all the labels from his clothing have been meticulously cut away. Every single one. Who was this man, and why did someone go to such lengths to ensure he remained a ghost? The investigation moved from the beach to the city. The unused train ticket led them to Adelaide's main railway station. There, in the station's cloakroom, they found a brown suitcase, checked in the morning before the man was found. Investigators hoped it would contain the key to his identity. They opened it with bated breath. Inside, they found more clothing. A dressing gown, slippers, trousers, a collection of ordinary personal effects. But just like the clothes he was wearing, every single tag and label had been painstakingly removed from these items too. One peculiar clue was a reel of waxed thread, a type not commonly available in Australia at the time. This specific thread was used to repair a tear in the pocket of the trousers the man was wearing. They also found a name written on a few items, T. Keane, a promising lead, but it quickly turned into a dead end. Police could find no record of a missing person named T. Keane anywhere in the English-speaking world. The suitcase, meant to provide answers, only deepened the enigma. The man remained a complete and utter blank slate. Months passed. The case grew cold. The unidentified man, now known as the Somerton Man, was laid to rest without a name. His effects were kept in storage, a silent testament to a puzzle that seemed destined to remain unsolved. But a professor, re-examining the evidence, decided to take one more look at the man's perfectly tailored trousers. He felt something unusual, a small, hard lump stitched deep within the fabric of the waistband's fob pocket. It was a hidden pocket, so cleverly sewn that the original investigators had completely missed it. With trembling hands, he reached inside the tiny, concealed space, his heart pounding with anticipation. He pulled out a minuscule, tightly rolled scrap of paper. It was no bigger than his thumbnail. Carefully, he unrolled the fragile piece. On it were printed two words in a distinctive, elegant font. The words were Tamám Shud, a phrase that would become the new cryptic name for the entire case. This was not a name, not a place, but a phrase, and its meaning was both poetic and chilling. Police circulated a photograph of the scrap, hoping someone would recognize the unusual font and phrase. A librarian soon identified the words. They are Persian, and they translate to "it is ended" or "it is finished." More specifically, this phrase is the final one in a famous collection of poems, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The poems of Omar Khayyam often contemplate life, its pleasures, and the finality of its end. The scrap of paper wasn't just a random quote, it had been physically torn from the last page of a specific copy of the book. The police now had a new, urgent mission to find the exact book from which this piece was torn. They launched a public appeal, asking citizens to check their copies of the Rubaiyat for a missing final page. Was this a cryptic message? A final poetic statement? Or a clue pointing towards something far more complex? The discovery of the phrase's origin didn't solve the case. It plunged it into a world of literature, codes, and secrets. The search for the book began, a hunt for a single object that might hold all the answers. Following the public appeal, a man came forward with a story that reignited the entire investigation. He explained that shortly after the Somerton Man was found, he discovered a copy of the Rubaiyat in his unlocked car. His car had been parked near Somerton Park Beach around the time of the discovery. He thought little of it. Thinking a stranger had simply tossed it in, he had put the book in his glove compartment and forgotten about it. It was only after seeing the police appeal in the newspaper that he made the connection and retrieved the book. He handed the book to the police. It was a rare first edition translation by Edward Fitzgerald. With immense anticipation, they turned to the final page. The words Tamám Shud were missing. Microscopic analysis of the paper and tear confirmed it. This was the exact book the scrap had come from. The connection was undeniable. The Somerton Man had either possessed this book or placed it in the car himself. But this incredible breakthrough was just the beginning. The book held another, even more baffling secret. As investigators examined the back of the book, they noticed faint pencil markings under a UV light. They were 5 lines of capital letters, seemingly random. It looked like a code. The second line was struck through, adding another layer of complexity to the already impenetrable puzzle. Was this the real message? Was the Tamám Shud phrase just a pointer to this secret inscription? The presence of a code suggested espionage. Was the Somerton Man a spy, meeting a grim fate after a mission? The world's best code breakers, including naval intelligence experts, were brought in to decipher the message. They tried every known method of decryption, from simple substitution ciphers to complex wartime techniques. But the message resisted all attempts. The sequence of letters appeared to be completely random. It was likely a one-time pad cipher, a theoretically unbreakable code that requires a unique key, now lost forever. The code, which promised to be the ultimate clue, had become the ultimate dead end, a lock without a key. While the code remained a mystery, the book held one more secret, hidden in plain sight. Also faintly written in pencil were the indentations of a telephone number, almost completely faded. This was a concrete lead, a direct link to a person in the real world. The police traced the number immediately. It belonged to a young nurse who lived in Glenelg, a suburb just a short walk from Somerton Park Beach. Her name was Jessica Thompson, though for years she was known publicly only by the pseudonym Jestyn. When questioned by police, she was evasive and seemed distressed by the entire situation. She denied knowing the Somerton Man, but her reaction when shown a plaster cast of his face was telling. One detective described her as being completely taken aback, to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint. She admitted that she had once owned a copy of the Rubaiyat and had given it to a man named Alfred Boxall. This seemed like the final piece of the puzzle. The Somerton Man must be Alfred Boxall. But the truth was stranger still. The police were confident they had their man. They began a search for Alfred Boxall, believing him to be the Somerton Man. The search, however, ended with an astonishing discovery. Alfred Boxall was found not in a morgue, but alive and well. He was living in Sydney, completely unaware of the mystery swirling around his name and the nurse. When asked, Boxall confirmed that the nurse Jestyn had indeed given him a copy of the Rubaiyat years earlier. And then came the final, baffling twist in this particular thread of the story. He went and retrieved the book. He presented to the detectives his copy of the Rubaiyat, the one Jestyn had given him. It was complete. The final page was intact. The words, Tamám Shud, were still there. This meant the Somerton Man was not Alfred Boxall. He was someone else entirely, a stranger. But he possessed a near-identical rare copy of the same book, which he used to connect with the same woman. The case was back to square one, but now with a cast of characters and a web of connections that defied simple explanation. With the Alfred Boxall lead exhausted, all eyes turned back to the nurse, Jessica Jestyn Thompson. Why was her unlisted phone number in the possession of the unidentified man? Why did she react so strongly to his likeness? She remained guarded throughout her life, offering little information and pleading ignorance about the man's identity. Her evasiveness only fueled speculation. Was she protecting someone, or was she afraid of something? Years later, her daughter would claim that her mother knew the identity of the Somerton Man and that her loyalties were to him. She also claimed that her mother spoke Russian, but would never admit it, adding to the espionage theory. Could the Somerton Man and Jestyn have been clandestine lovers, or perhaps operatives in a Cold War spy ring? One theory suggests the Somerton Man was the father of Jestyn's son, a secret she carried to her grave. Jessica Thompson passed away in 2007, taking whatever secrets she held with her, leaving only more questions. Her role in the mystery remains its most tantalizing and frustrating aspect, a human connection that is forever just out of reach. For over 70 years, the Somerton Man has been a source of endless fascination for amateur and professional investigators alike. The theories are as varied as they are intriguing. The most popular remains the Cold War spy theory. Was he a Soviet agent who was compromised, or a Western operative silenced before he could deliver his message? The unbreakable code and the meticulously removed labels certainly point towards a man trained in the art of espionage. Another theory paints a more tragic picture, a story of unrequited love. Perhaps he was a jilted lover of the nurse, leaving the book as a final poetic message before ending his own story. The phrase, "it is finished," could be interpreted as a final farewell in a tale of personal despair. Other, more fringe theories suggest he was a smuggler or even involved in some unknown occult practice. Each theory attempts to weave the disparate clues, the code, the book, the nurse, into a coherent narrative. But without a definitive answer, the story of the Somerton Man remains a canvas onto which we project our own ideas of mystery. Let's revisit the scene on the beach. One of the most perplexing details was the man's appearance. Despite being on a public beach, his double-breasted suit was clean and well-pressed. Most strikingly, his shoes were described as being spotlessly clean and highly polished, an impossibility for someone who had walked on sand. This suggests he may have been carried to the location after his final moments, placed carefully against the seawall. The official report noted no signs of disturbance, but these small details tell a different story. His last meal, a pasty, was consumed 3 to 4 hours before he was found, yet no signs of sickness were present. The cause of his demise was ruled to be some form of undetectable substance, a theory that has been debated ever since. His physical description was widely circulated: athletic build, broad shoulders, and distinctively high calf muscles. Some have suggested these features were characteristic of a ballet dancer or a long-distance runner. Every physical detail, from his polished shoes to his musculature, adds another layer of contradiction to this impossible man. Let's return to the cryptic code found in the back of the book. It remains the most tantalizing clue. The 5 lines of letters have been scrutinized by generations of cryptographers, both amateur and professional. One theory is that the letters are the first letters of words from a poem or text, possibly even the Rubaiyat itself. However, no one has been able to find a matching passage that makes sense, especially with the high frequency of certain letters. The crossed-out second line is particularly baffling. Was it a mistake, or an intentional part of the code's structure? The one-time pad theory remains the most likely explanation for why it's so resistant to being solved. This method, used heavily in espionage, would mean the key, perhaps another book or a list of random letters, is lost forever. If it is a one-time pad, the Somerton Man could have been on his way to meet his contact when something went wrong. The code represents the heart of the enigma, a message we can see but cannot read, a voice we can hear but not understand. Until it is cracked, if it ever can be, the true purpose of the Somerton Man's final journey will remain shrouded in speculation. The setting of the mystery is crucial. Adelaide in 1948 was not a random choice of location. In the post-war era, Australia was a close ally of the United States and the United Kingdom. Nearby was the Woomera Prohibited Area, a top-secret rocket range and intelligence-gathering facility. This made Adelaide a hotbed of intelligence activity, with spies from all sides operating in the shadows. There was also a significant uranium mine in the region, a vital component for the burgeoning nuclear programs of the West. Could the Somerton Man have been involved in intelligence related to these highly sensitive sites? His arrival in Adelaide, seemingly without a past, fits the profile of an operative inserted for a specific mission. The quiet suburb of Glenelg, where the nurse lived, would have been an ideal location for a discreet meeting. The context of the Cold War transforms the case from a local mystery into a potential international incident. It frames the silent man on the beach not just as a person, but as a pawn in a much larger, global game. In recent years, advances in technology have offered new hope for solving this decades-old mystery. For years, researchers pleaded with Australian authorities to exhume the Somerton Man's remains for DNA testing. In 2021, that request was finally granted. The world watched as the nameless man's grave was carefully opened. The goal was to extract a DNA profile that could be compared against genealogical databases to find a living relative. Another source of potential DNA was the plaster bust, which had trapped some of the man's hair in the plaster. One researcher, Derek Abbott, has been at the forefront of this effort, working tirelessly to give the man his name back. In 2022, Abbott announced a major breakthrough, claiming to have used the hair to identify the Somerton Man. He named him as Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. However, this identification is yet to be officially confirmed by South Australian police, leaving the result in limbo. Even with a name, the central questions remain. Why was he there? And what does the code mean? The mystery endures. Let's assemble the puzzle pieces one more time to appreciate the full scope of this baffling case. It begins with the man himself, anonymous, perfectly dressed, and without a single identifying mark on his person. All labels on his clothing were removed, a deliberate act of erasing his origins and identity. His pockets contained only the most mundane items, tickets for travel, gum, and a comb, nothing personal. The suitcase found at the station deepened the mystery, with more unlabeled clothing and the mysterious T. Keen name. The waxed thread found in the case, used for a minor repair, suggested a meticulous and prepared individual. These initial clues painted a portrait of a man who was a ghost, carefully curating his anonymity. He left behind a trail of objects that seemed to promise answers but only ever offered more questions. Every detail was a dead end, a false lead, a path that led nowhere. It was the perfect puzzle. And then, from a hidden pocket, came the clue that would define the entire mystery: Tamám Shud. The discovery of the Tamám Shud scrap transformed the case, opening a new literary dimension to the puzzle. It led investigators to a specific book, a collection of Persian poetry about the finality of life. The book itself, found in a stranger's car, was a bizarre twist, a clue left seemingly by chance. And this book contained not one, but two more layers of mystery, hidden on its back cover. First, the phone number, a direct and tangible link to a person connected to the Somerton Man. This led to the nurse, Jestyn, the enigmatic woman who knew more than she ever revealed. Her connection to another man, Alfred Boxall, and his own copy of the book was a confounding red herring. And second, the unbreakable code, 5 lines of capital letters that have defied decryption for over 70 years. This code suggests a world of espionage, of secret messages and clandestine meetings. The book, initially a clue, became a Pandora's box of riddles, each one more complex than the last. Amidst the codes, spies, and theories, it's easy to forget that at the center of this story is a person. A man who had a life, who walked and breathed, and whose story ended on a cold beach far from home. If the recent identification of Carl Charles Webb is correct, he was an engineer, a man of science and precision. He was reportedly estranged from his wife, a detail that adds a layer of personal sadness to his story. Did he travel to Adelaide seeking a new life, a reconciliation, or something else entirely? And what of Jessica Thompson, the nurse? She too was a real person, caught in a web not of her own making. Her lifelong silence speaks volumes. Was it born of fear, loyalty, or love? The mystery is not just about a code. It's about the human emotions that might have driven these events. Giving the Somerton Man a name doesn't end the story. It simply gives us a protagonist. A man whose final chapter remains unwritten, a silent testament to a secret he carried to the very end. December 1948. An unidentified man is found on Somerton Park Beach. The mystery begins. A suitcase is discovered at Adelaide Station, containing clothes with all labels removed. April 1949. A hidden pocket reveals a scrap of paper with the words, Tamám Shud. The phrase is traced to the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, sparking a nationwide search for the book. July 1949. The specific copy of the book is found, containing a code and a phone number. The phone number leads to a nurse, Jestyn, who denies knowing the man, but appears shaken. The Alfred Boxall lead proves to be a dead end, deepening the confusion around the nurse's story. For decades, the code remains unbroken, and the man's identity remains unknown. 2021, the Somerton Man's remains are exhumed in a new effort to extract DNA. 2022, researchers announce a potential identification, giving the ghost a name, Carl Charles Webb. Even if his name is Carl Webb, the why remains the most profound question of all. Why did he go to such lengths to erase his identity, removing every label from his clothing? What was the true nature of his relationship with the nurse, Jessica Thompson? Why did she possess his unlisted number, and why did she deny knowing him so vehemently? What is the message hidden within the 5 lines of unbreakable code? Was it a list of targets, a lover's lament, or simply a random jumble of letters? And how did his story end? Was it a clandestine encounter gone wrong, or a solitary personal decision? These are the questions that keep the legend of the Somerton Man alive decades after his discovery. The case forces us to confront the limits of investigation and the possibility of a perfect secret. Some stories, perhaps, are not meant to be finished. They are meant to make us wonder. From a lonely beach in 1948 to the cutting edge of DNA science in the 21st century, the story of the Somerton Man is a journey through one of history's most compelling unsolved cases. He was a man who went to extraordinary lengths to become a ghost, to leave no trace behind. And yet, in his quest for anonymity, he became eternally famous, a legend whispered across generations. The small scrap of paper in his pocket, with its 2 poetic words, was his unintended epitaph, a message that meant, "It is finished," for a story that has no end. Perhaps the true secret was not in the code, but in the allure of the unknown itself. A reminder that some puzzles are so perfectly constructed that their mystery is more valuable than their solution. The man on the beach remains a silent sentinel of secrets, his story echoing through time. His name may be known, but his secret is safe. For now, his story is finished.